Hi everyone, Chris Natzke here with Black Belt Leadership Speaking and Coaching with your Mind of a Champion tip of the week. Today I want to talk about how we can navigate through challenging situations, oftentimes just based on our perception of how we're going to be dealing with what we have at hand and the action that we're going to take and how we're actually looking at ourselves in those situations. Throughout the years, I have a very good friend, Teresa Byrne, and we've had some amazing conversations over the last decade and a half or so, or maybe even more. But recently we had a discussion where she talked about her thoughts of what it's like to move through challenging, and she basically labeled ways of being, three specific ways of being that we can have within ourselves when we're dealing with challenge. And the first one, she says, we can be a victim. We can certainly be a victim to our situation. We can cause, which can cause ourselves to blame others and not take responsibility for the situations we're in. So we can be a victim. And number two, though, is she said we can be a victor. We can take those situations that we've had and we can turn them around and we can say, wow, what can I learn from this? And where can I take my power back from them? And the third option, which I thought was probably the most powerful, is something that she said you can become your third option as a visionary. And that visionary is looking at those challenging situations, overcoming them personally, but then saying, how can I take those situations and make a positive impact in the lives of others? So again, three distinct choices when we're dealing with challenges or we have been victimized. And that is that we stay a victim, we become a victor, or we transform into a visionary. Now, it made me think as I was preparing this today about a story I heard years ago. It was about two brothers, twin brothers, who from the time they were infants had been followed by sociologists who were studying them. And these two young men, or two babies, were actually born into a household where they had a father that really, really struggled. He was addicted to alcohol. He couldn't hold down a job. He left, was in and out of their lives several times. And that's the environment that they grew up in. So they really didn't have a father in their lives. And when he was in their lives, he was always bringing havoc to their situation. So what they did is they followed these young men, and now these young guys are in their early 30s, and they're taking a look, the sociologists are, at their life. And they went to the first brother, and interestingly enough, kind of sadly enough, he followed in his father's footsteps. He had been drug and alcohol induced, and he had a life of an addict. He had been in and out of prison. He was estranged from his wife and kids, and he'd actually, he had been imprisoned. And when they asked him about his situation, he said, well, with a father like mine, how could I be any different? And then they went to the second brother. Now, the second brother had, like all of us, had challenges of his own, but things were a lot different in his life. He had finished college. He had a really good job that he loved, and he was making an impact. He had a wife that he had been with for years and two amazing kids. And so even though he had his challenges like we all do, he was really thriving. And when they asked him, how could you have a life the way you have now? He said, well, with a father like mine, how could I be any different? Same situation, two different perspectives. One person looking at it from a victim standpoint, the other looking at it from a victor standpoint. So the question is, how do you want to be living life? What steps do you want to take? So let's review those three V's, if you will, that I talked about. That victim mentality, it's easy to fall into. And in fact, all of us have had situations, myself included, where we can call ourselves a victim, where we were treated poorly, we were abused, we were betrayed, we were lied to, whatever. But the fact of the matter is that those are things that happen to us. It's not who we are. Let me say that again. Those are things that happen to us, but they're not who we are. So we always have a choice to show up differently, regardless of the situations that come upon us in our lives. Number two is about how can you be that victor? Well, I think one of the key ways you can do it is to just simply accept what's happened. You don't have to like it. You don't have to say it's okay, but you accept it. Because when you accept it, you start to take your power back. And the other thing you do is you accept your role in that. And now let me be really clear on this. I know that sometimes, particularly when young children are victimized, they don't really have have a say in that. But what ends up happening is as they grow into adults, they have a way of reframing that experience. And then we can look at it from a standpoint of we've either created, promoted, or allowed every situation or our response to every situation in our lives. And when we do that, now we begin to take our power back. We become victorious over those things. Now, if you're in a situation right now where you don't think that's possible, I just want to remind you of someone that I've recently learned about. Her name is Dr. Eva Eger. And Dr. Eger is a renowned psychologist here in the United States, but she's also a Holocaust survivor. She was in Auschwitz as a 13-year-old. And she came out of that experience and really thrived as a result. But one of the things she said that was so profound for me is she said, there's no time in my life to hate, because if I hate, I'm still a prisoner. And then Hitler would win, right? So what she did is she chose to take this experience that was gut-wrenching, let's say, in terrible experience, but she chose to be victorious over it. And she also, because of her life's work, now has become a visionary, where she took that experience and now she's helping others take their power back in their lives. And we all have that opportunity to be that visionary. It may not be on a grand scale. It could be that if we've had things that have happened to us in our lives that have been difficult, that we choose to show up differently in our lives, not only with the people that we meet on the street, but also with the people that are closest to us. And it might just be living our lives from a standpoint of compassion and respect toward others because we didn't have that in the past. It could be a much larger scale. It could be that we start a business or an organization or a charity that really impacts others, and we take that experience that we had and we transform it. We transform it into something that can now benefit others because of the experience that we went through. So that's what I want to share with you today, my friends. We all have a choice. We all have a choice. And sometimes they're not easy choices, and sometimes they're not easy experiences. But we have a choice to be a victim, a victor, or a visionary. What's yours? Thanks so much for listening, my friends. As always, if you enjoyed this little video, please comment, please like, please share it. And also, if you have certain ideas that you'd love for me to expand upon, you've got questions or whatever, please send them to me. I'd love to help you out in any way I can. So thanks so much for listening. And once again, this has been Chris Natzke with Black Belt Leadership Speaking and Coaching. And we'll see you next time on the Mind of a Champion Tip of the Week.